So Trump, at the end of the day, does not care about having allegiance to the promises to his base. He's a con man at the end of the day, and he will do whatever is best for his businesses. If we don't rise up and stop Israel from committing this horrific genocide in plain day, what is next? You cannot keep people deprived of basic human rights and liberty. You can't keep people caged like animals. You can't starve babies. So growing up as an American, Israel was always kind of an extension of my country. It was always seen as, essentially the 51st state. They kind of used Trump as a Trojan horse to try to reinvigorate the neocon plan, the long-standing dream of regime change in Iran.
My name is Charulata Biswas, and today I'm being joined by Abby Martin, who is an independent journalist, filmmaker, and creator of The Empire Files. Her film Gaza Fights for Freedom offers a raw, deeply reported account of the siege of Gaza, something rarely seen in US media. Today, as the dust settles on the ceasefire between Israel and Iran, we ask, is peace even possible when the world's biggest superpower, the United States of America, keeps arming both sides? And what's really going on behind the rhetoric of peace, security, and freedom? So, Abby, thank you so much for being here. I know you have been covering a lot and you are in between your news reports and interviews, so I deeply appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you.
All right, so let me begin with my first question. Israel attacked Iran's nuclear sites on June 13th, and now, after 2 weeks, there's a ceasefire in place between Israel and Iran. And this came after the US intervened. But right now, it feels like a pause. What's your sense? Will this ceasefire hold, or are we on a short fuse?
We're living in tumultuous times, and the Middle East is a tinderbox right now at the doing of a genocidal rogue state that has nuclear weapons. It's a proxy of the US empire, again, a nuclear armed rogue state that is, of course, facilitating and subsidizing this horrific genocidal onslaught. I think this is a pause, a cessation of course, unrelenting massacres for the last year and a half. So I think that what we're going to see, Israel already has been assassinating top nuclear scientists within Iran for years with complete impunity. They're bombing these people alongside their entire families. I can't even fathom the outrage if this were Israeli scientists that were being assassinated alongside their entire families. So I do think that this is a pause, and I do not think it's the end. I think that there's a lot of arrogance and belligerence when it comes to Israel and the US, and they're not going to stop. They don't know how to stop, and they are completely shrouded with impunity, and no one is stopping them.
Abby, do you sense that this was all an attempt to change the regime in Iran? What's your assessment?
Well, I think that Trump and a lot of the neocons, Trump's an empty vessel for his Wall Street backers, Miriam Eldison, all the people who are really paid for his presidency. He's an empty vessel. He doesn't really have an ideological root, but I do think he is beholden, obviously, to his donors and backers, and he is close friends with Netanyahu. We know that neocons have served a very important role. They kind of used Trump as a Trojan horse to try to reinvigorate the neocon plan, the long-standing dream of regime change in Iran. So Israel seized the political capital of October 7th to go full genocidal and try to expand their Greater Israel project. The US seized that political capital to then engage in their greater project, which is obviously complete hegemony in the Middle East and subservience from any, state that is not completely allied with US imperialism. So the US kind of catapulted this. I think that they just went along with it. We know from the former NATO commander, General Wesley Clark, that this is a long-standing plan back from the Bush administration. 7 countries in 5 years. Clearly, they weren't able to do that, but we fast forward 20 years and we see the plans are still clearly laid out. Trump dismantling the nuclear deal when he came into office the first time. Clearly, they didn't want diplomacy or negotiations. They want complete and total annihilation of any state that is not totally dominated by the US policy.
Absolutely, I understand. And contradictory to what he promised, Trump's big pitch was to end forever wars. And now he wants the Nobel Peace Prize so desperately, right? So wouldn't supporting another war get in the way of that image?
Well, Trump is a con man above all, and he speaks out of all sides of his mouth. And so, even in the ramp up to his first presidency, he was able to kind of go to the left of Hillary Clinton when it came to her neocon foreign policy. He was saying no more wars. She's the neocon belligerent warmonger. And you saw him kind of catalyze and try to crystallize those talking points in the second round, even though he expanded drone strikes, increased them 400%, tried to, he assassinated Soleimani. It was a miracle that we didn't go to war with Iran the first time. He tried to do a coup in Venezuela. All of these things were horrific and laid bare that Trump was expanding the empire, went against all of his promises of, an isolationist, America first, non-interventionist. So I wasn't fooled, but I think it's amazing how quickly the mask fell. I think that, above all, he doesn't have to do anything to MAGA. I mean, his base elected him, and now he can just totally abandon all promises that he had to this kind of cult-like fan base because he just doesn't care. He's a con man at the end of the day, and he will do whatever is best for his businesses.
You've had considerable experience in reporting on Gaza. What do you feel is a solution, or at least a starting point?
I think it's very clear after over 75 years of horrific oppression, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and of course decades of horrific military occupation, brutal medieval siege on the people of Gaza and the West Bank. I think it is very clear that the only solution is one democratic state with equal rights for all, an immediate lifting of this horrific, barbaric practice of keeping people subservient into second-class citizens. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's a tinderbox. You cannot keep people deprived of basic human rights and liberty. You can't keep people caged like animals. You can't starve babies. This is a genocidal policy. They want to kill infants. They are preventing baby formula from getting in there. Baby formula is the only thing that babies can drink. That is genocidal. That is genocidal. We need to stop. I mean, it is absolutely barbaric that we're in the year 2025. We are watching this in 4K on our phones. The audacity, the belligerence, the arrogance of countries to think that this is acceptable. This is the new precedent that we're setting for the globe. If we don't rise up and stop Israel from committing this horrific genocide in plain day, what is next? What message is that telling the other countries of the world that they can do lawlessly? Does law mean nothing? Does human rights mean nothing? This is a moment that is a testament to the human race. If we do not band together and do everything that we can, like Jeremy Scahill said, what will be next will be even worse. And I don't want to live in a world like that. And I don't think any of us do. And so we have to motivate each other to stop this atrocity because it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And every day people die needlessly. And every victim of this genocide is a whole world lost. And I don't want that on my shoulders. I don't want the blood on my hands anymore as an American citizen. It's my government subsidizing this. And I cannot sit idly by and watch this for one more day without shouting from the rooftops, stop it, stop. The only solution is a complete and total end to this horrific policy, sanctions on Israel, accountability for all of the war criminals, mass re-education of the horrific genocidal mentality and mania that has taken over Israeli society, and a full democratization of the state, integration of the Palestinians as equal players. That and only that is when we can see true peace come to Palestine, Israel, and the Middle East at large, because we know that this is the crux of so much tension and strife in the region.
Abby, the photos you posted recently of your friend's family who were killed in the middle of saving the wounded, that was quite heart-wrenching to see. How do you see the solution on Gaza being arrived at?
Yes, my friend's family, Ahmad Salem, he was one kind, gentle soul who spent the last year and a half giving food and clean water and trying to help the children around him. Every soul lost is a person's world. And so to see my friends who I worked with on Gaza Fights for Freedom just day in and day out losing brother after cousin after neighbor after child over and over again, it's horrific. It's unrelenting. The loss is so immense. How do you wrap your mind around this? How do you wrap your mind around the fact that every single day Israeli forces are committing massacres akin to the worst atrocities that I learned about in history books? From the crime of the century, the Iraq War. I mean, everything that happens every day. Just look at the last 2 weeks. Tanks shelling into crowds of civilians, starving people coming to just get morsels of food, and tanks are shelling them, murdering dozens of people at once. I just cannot fathom. I cannot fathom the fact that we have let it get this far and that this kind of death and atrocities are normalized every single day. I can't fathom the fact that starvation is a necessary weapon of war to the so-called civilized world. This is barbaric and savage, and I can't stand behind it. And I am shocked and disgusted at the rest of the world, the leaders that are just sitting there with just only rhetoric and no actions. Israel should be completely isolated for its horrific acts against humanity. And instead, they're coddled and protected.
You know, there is a popular saying that no matter whoever becomes the US president, whether it is Democrat or Republican, the full-fledged support for Israel is always there. So why do you think it's there? And why is the US always there to protect Israeli interests?
Well, the U.S., growing up in the U.S., Israel was always seen as an extension of the United States. Zionism was not really seen as a separate ideology. It was simply an extension of American exceptionalism. So growing up as an American, Israel was always kind of an extension of my country. It was always seen as, essentially the 51st state. I mean, the only democracy in the Middle East. We had to protect it, right? It was part of us. And so, not even knowing what Palestine was, not even knowing what Gaza was, the complete indoctrination of not just the distortion and mistruths about Palestine, Israel, but just the entire apparatus of global affairs, foreign policy. I mean, all we are is lied to. The entire media acts as an arm of the state, and it activates as a propaganda apparatus whenever this consent is needed to be manufactured. So when you see a Pew poll from last year saying more Americans half of Americans don't know if more Israelis died than Palestinians, that shows you that there's vast, deep-seated ignorance in even what is going on and the consequences of these policies around the world and how they're even linked to our government. But every US president, every presidential administration has staunch allegiance to Israel because that's just the name of the game. That's the way the institutions are set up. You don't get into these positions of power unless you're a Zionist, unless you're a true believer in imperialism. So it's adjacent to US exceptionalism, to US imperialism. And of course, the lobby, to the extent that America has subsidized and emboldened the lobby, it's kind of become a runaway train where now you see lobby representatives undermining actual constitutional rights of American citizens, lobbying to state legislatures to pass anti-BDS laws and things like that and undermine our free speech. So it is confusing to people to think, how did this lobby get such undue influence? But it all does come back to the fact that it is empowered by the largest, most violent military apparatus the world has ever seen. And when Israel is a proxy to that, a rogue nuclear-armed state, an empire that's holding the world hostage with nuclear weapons, no one can bat an eye to that. No one can stand up to that because everyone's terrified of the implications of standing up to what Iran calls the Great Satan.
Abby, you have called the US a glorified arms dealer, and this year's defense budget really seems to prove your point. It is the highest in American history. Both Trump and Biden talked about cutting spendings. So who's really benefiting from it?
Well, the president is really the arms dealer in chief. That is what the job is. I mean, you look at all arms sales around the world, the United States empire provides nearly 50% of all weapons. It is the largest force of instability and violence in the world today. And that is without a doubt. We have the 5 premier defense contractor companies here in the US: Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. And all of those companies are pariahs. I mean, no one should be working for these engines of death and destruction. The lobbyists for the defense contractors sometimes outweigh even the congressional representatives. I mean, it's absolutely cartoonish when you see the actual way that the institution is built to just benefit defense contractors. War is a business, and business has never been better. And it doesn't matter what the outcome of the wars are, as long as the money keeps flowing and the weapons keep flowing, these contractors will make out with billions of dollars. Doesn't matter the millions of people that are thrown in the meat grinder in Ukraine. No, they are making record, earth-shattering profits year after year. And Gaza, I mean, you see the internal phone calls and stuff with these board of directors. They're probably just salivating over the profits that are skyrocketing through this genocide. So it is absolutely insane. It is all to benefit U.S. capital. And then you have the U.S. military basically as the muscle to protect the business. So it's enforced around the world to just protect global capital. And the defense contractors make the laws and they enforce all of the policies. And you have this revolving door with the military industrial complex going right back into the defense industry and then right back into the military industrial complex. And it's just unbelievable how transparent it is.
So, Abby, while we talk about war abroad, there's another war brewing at home, and I'm talking about the immigration crackdown. Trump's deportation campaign is back, and billions are being funneled into that so-called big, beautiful wall. What do you expect to see on the ground in the coming months?
You know, Trump announced that he wanted $1 trillion defense budget. This is astronomical. If you actually look at the true cost of our defense spending, quote unquote, defense spending is really war. It's 1.5 trillion already when you count in veterans benefits. So this is how much the United States is already spending in totality year after year on war. And just making war a business. And like Martin Luther King Jr. said, when a nation is spending that much on an engine of war, at home, there's spiritual death. So you see this hollowed out of all the social programs. 60% of Americans have no money even for savings or for an emergency. People are at the edge. And so what you're seeing is with this horrific draconian overreach, this fascist, Gestapo in the streets, ripping people out of their homes, kidnapping people, ripping mothers away from their screaming children in the streets, even people who maybe thought that they wanted to deport illegals or whatever the mantra is that Trump ran on, with obviously the Democrats agree to a certain extent. I think when you see this nightmarish dystopian reality playing out, people are shocked and horrified. They don't want to live in a country where it doesn't matter if your crime is stepping over an invisible line because maybe your country was bombed or sanctioned by the US and you have no economic viability. What's the bigger crime? Ripping a mother away from her child and throwing her in a detention facility, or deporting her from the country away from her children? That's a horrific crime against humanity. So I think that people really need to take a step back and look in the mirror. What kind of person do you want to be? What are you supporting? What kind of policies are you supporting? So I do see this as a burgeoning mass consciousness. All these people are linking these struggles together, and Trump's policies are having an enormous backlash because people at the end of the day do not want to live in a country where fascism has taken over. People want to live in a country where their fellow human beings are treated with dignity and respect. And that is not what we're seeing now. And I think we're going to see a mass uprising against Trumpism, and we're already seeing that.
And do you see a glimmer of hope when we see someone like Mamdani, who won the nomination in New York? Do you think that that sort of is like a reflection of what you're seeing?
I think the Mamdani win in New York is a huge moment. It's the most Jewish country. Sorry, New York City is the most Jewish city in our country. And they just elected for the primary candidate, a man who basically is saying exactly what I'm saying, that no, an apartheid military occupation state that has Jewish supremacy, no, this shouldn't exist. A state with equal rights for all. I mean, the fact that a mayoral race is exposing just this absurd obsession with Israel. Why should the mayor of New York even be commenting on a foreign country? So I think it's exposed a lot to not only New Yorkers, but I think Americans in general who are thinking, wait a minute, what's going on? But I think above all, it's dealt a huge blow to Israel in general and all of its supporters, because it is finally saying your propaganda does not work. APAC does not scare us, because at the end of the day, people are not hoodwinked by this absurd baseless propaganda anymore, this upside down reality, this gaslighting that you're telling us. No, people see the truth with their own eyes. You can no longer tell us that it's anti-Semitic to care about Palestinian lives. So this is the fatal blow to the propaganda machine. Hasbara is no longer working. Even in the most Jewish state in the country, we see polling among young Jews. They no longer sympathize or even identify with Israel. The conflation with a peaceful religion with a genocidal death cult is no longer applicable. And so we're seeing a complete tidal change in the sentiment, in the consciousness. And now Israel and its defenders are going to be on the defense for the rest of time until they advocate for the fall of apartheid.
Have you ever been censored or shadow banned or blocked from speaking at universities, or do you think there is any room left in US media for pro-Palestine or anti-war space right now?
I think that we've seen with the Silicon Valley oligarchs who are curating our reality, working in concert with the political establishment, unabashed, Zionist, unapologetically imperialist, capitalist. I think it is up to us to elevate Palestinian journalists, those who are left. Palestinian voices, we need to continue to uplift those voices and try to showcase what they are telling us and what they've been trying to tell us for the last 75 years. Because thanks to social media so far, we have learned the truth. We have gotten the truth dictated to us from the bottom up, from the grassroots, from the voices that were attempted to be marginalized and erased. And so I do see hope. I see eternal optimism with the fact that we can get a pipeline directly from Palestinians without the filter of the New York Times or these so-called egregious papers of record that are essentially propaganda rags for war profiteers. I'm extremely optimistic with where we are going with this mass consciousness and this kind of solidarity that I'm seeing included worldwide with my brothers and sisters with an international lens of how to approach global struggles with a global solution. So I'm very optimistic that we will see not only an end to this genocide, but an end to Israeli apartheid within this generation.
All right, Abby, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation and sharing your insights. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.